righty, we are back. My name is Jay Berman. Welcome to the New York Giants Squad Show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. We have a significant hire in the front office. We'll tell you who it is. We'll break it all down coming up next.
I'm Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants, and this is only the beginning of changing the Giants from perpetual losers to potential winners.
I'm Mark Collins, two-time Super Bowl champion. That concrete is starting to be poured so it can harden for that foundation for a Giants' successful season.
Let's go, Big Blue. It's the New York Giants Squad. Everything New York Giants every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the G-Men. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Get ready and squad up. The Giants Squad Show starts now.
All right, we are back. It is Patricia, it is Mark, it is Jay. Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Plenty to discuss in Giants country. Again, alongside Patricia and Mark, my name is Jay. Patricia in the leadoff spot, still wondering, or at least reveling in the Matt Nagy hire. Obviously, things are going to look quite different on offense this year for the New York Giants, Patricia.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, Jaxon got off to a pretty good start considering, he didn't have Cam Scatterboo for most of the season. He didn't have Malik Neighbors. He still managed to do some things and turn a few heads. So now you bring in Matt Nagy, who has a reputation as being creative, who has a reputation of being able to connect with quarterbacks. You look at the work he did with Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, and you keep your fingers crossed that he can replicate some of that work that he did with Mahomes here with Dart.
Mark, all yours.
Yeah, being in Kansas City and following the Chiefs as well, what I've seen was, and even some people, fans and people in the front office and whatever, they saw that Nagy's offensive philosophy was getting stale. It became pretty much 80-20 pass to run ratio. And you can't do that in this National Football League. Now, before all this stuff happened over the last year or so, pretty much last year, it was pretty much, 60-40, a good balance, run the pass. It went way the other way, and the Chiefs became predictable. Now, with that being said, I hope with the Giants, he goes back to what he did with Mahomes earlier. And even though Eric Bieniemy was there, and neither one was basically calling the plays, it was Andy Reid. Andy Reid had full stop on what was being said, and Andy listened to the players. I think Nagy's there with the Giants will go back to doing what he did with Bieniemy there and Andy Reid to make the offense more effective. And listen to Jaxon Dart. Hey, Jaxon, what works for you? What do you like to do? How can I call plays that fit your playing abilities? How can we make this both work? Once he does that, he did that with Patrick. Once you do something like that, this offense could take off. What he cannot do is go back to doing what he did his last year in Kansas City and make that offense what more predictable a pass to run.
All right. Obviously, we heard a lot about John Harbaugh suggesting that he wants a guy who has called plays before with experience. Now, Nagy has both head coaching experience and obviously play calling experience, a huge part of what John Harbaugh wanted, Patricia.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about it before on the show. The Giants need to hit the ground running. As much as it was intriguing to consider, maybe having Davis Webb come in as offensive coordinator or this guy come in as defensive coordinator or whatever, they've got to hit the ground running. And John Harbaugh, in an interview he talked about, look, I'm a little bit more involved with the defense and special teams than I am with offense. Well, we all knew that the offensive coordinator position was going to be a key hire. So it only made sense, if you think about it, for him to go and get somebody who had been there, done that. And, is Matt Nagy's system perfect? No, it's not. I mean, is it one of the best that you'll remember? Probably not. But does it get the job done? And can he adapt it to the talent that the Giants have? And that's what John Harbaugh was looking for, is a guy who comes in and says, okay, I'm going to adapt to what I have as opposed to force what I like to do down your throats.
Nobody ever said or is saying or suggesting that Jaxon Dart will turn into Patrick Mahomes. That being said, there's a lot of similarities in their game. So despite the fact that Nagy struggled in Kansas City this past year, Mark, there is a familiarity in that it's a similar type quarterback, if you will.
Yeah, they're very similar. The biggest differential part is the plays that were called for Patrick Mahomes. Patrick only ran when he had to run. Okay? He always scrambled to throw the ball looking downfield. Jaxon Dart, if the play breaks down, he's going to take off. He's looking to run immediately. That's where I think Nagy's got to be more stringent to work with Jaxon to tell him, hey, the play's not over when the pocket breaks down. You got to extend the play, not to run, but to look downfield to get rid of the ball. That'll be the biggest thing. Now, as far as physical attributes or whatever, I'm not going to try to compare a guy who's been in the league for 2 years compared to a guy who's been in the league 7, 8 years and went to 4 or 5 Super Bowls. It's no comparison. That's where they differentiate. But as far as playing abilities, they're pretty similar. Jackson's got to learn when the pocket breaks down, don't look to run and put yourself in harm's way. Escape and throw the ball. That's where I think Nagy can be more effective working with Jaxon and can hopefully take this offense to another level.
You know, it's funny. We never suggested or never thought about Matt Nagy as a possibility for OC for the Giants. But now that we look back at it, we've got the Andy Reid coaching tree, Harbaugh and Nagy both coming from that. So there absolutely, I guess, was some hints there that this could happen, despite the fact that we were all surprised, Patricia, that Nagy got the job.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it kind of makes sense. I mean, you know, this is what John Harbaugh knows. And there's a certain degree of comfort in going with what you know. Now, sometimes you can roll the dice and you can go with what you don't know. You know, a great example, Bill Belichick, when he came in, he was I think started off as a very low level assistant, worked his way up. I know, you know, from talking to some of Mark's former teammates, they were like, who is this guy? Is he, you know, is he some kind of scientist or what? You know, they had some doubts about him, but you know what? Belichick worked out pretty good for the Giants and beyond. So, but that said, when you have to hit the ground running, there's a degree of, you know, okay, I know this guy, I kind of know what he's going to do, how he thinks. And there's that comfort level that allows you to say, okay, we're going to hit the ground running and boom, we're off and going.
Mark, we always talk about coaching trees, and I know we just mentioned this again, that Harbaugh and Nagy are from the Andy Reid coaching tree. That being said, I was thinking about the John Harbaugh coaching tree, not the Andy Reid coaching tree. So we'll kick it back, I guess, another generation. And again, it's the Andy Reid coaching tree.
Yeah, you know, it's who you know. You know, they know each other very well, you know, so makes sense to me. Now, was Nagy in my playbook? No, I didn't see that play in my playbook at all. Is he a wild type of guy? Is he a move the needle kind of guy? No, but as Patricia just said, and I agree, it makes flipping sense. You know, it's like in the draft, right? Everybody wants to hide the wide receiver or the flashy linebacker or whatever, but nobody wants the offensive lineman. It's drafted number, you know, in the first round overall, right? First overall pick. It's not exciting. It's not sexy until that left tackle offensive lineman is protecting your quarterback for the next 10 years, right? That's when it becomes sexy. But I'll tell you, Nagy right now, and more I've thought of it over the days, yeah, it makes sense. It's a perfect fit, you know, just how it is. And knowing those guys, knowing each other, Harbaugh and Nagy, and Andy Reid connection, it just makes sense. It's a seamless marriage, so I say. Just it makes sense, so it works out. My biggest thing is hopefully that happens, is if Jaxon Dart really buys in to what Nagy's saying. I'm pretty sure he will, because look where he came from. You know, Patrick Mahomes did a lot of good things in Kansas City. Andy Reid knows it well. John Harbaugh knows it well. So it's up to Jaxon Dart to totally buy in.
All right, Patricia, obviously things got stale in Kansas City, and, not everything lasts forever. So I don't think that that's a knock on him. That being said, what do we think his strengths are? Like, what are we looking at as far as offensive potential? Now, we need Neighbors to get healthy. We need Scadaboo to get healthy. Those are huge keys. That being said, what are some of the strengths of Nagy?
Some of the strengths, and I talked to Ryan Tracy of Locked On Chiefs about this on today's show. Ryan mentioned that Nagy can be very creative, that, he goes in with a plan. The one area that maybe he lacks and he still needs to build up is what happens when teams figure him out and, the adjusting. But he does come up with a creative plan. He's also a very good communicator, a good teacher, works well with quarterbacks, can kind of, get through to them to say, hey, look, hey, Jaxon, don't run unless the play, every time the play breaks down, stop playing hero ball. So there are some things to like. And again, it's going to depend on the personnel they bring in. They're certainly going to need to do something about tight end. They can't go into the season with just, what they have on the roster. Theo Johnson's the only guy under contract. But Matt Nagy is, he brings creativity and he adapts to what he has. And that is so important because how many times have we seen coordinators come in here and they say, I want to play this. And the players he has doesn't necessarily fit what the coordinator wants to play. Therefore, guys end up being wasted. Their talents are wasted. Nagy is not like that. So I'm looking to him to have creativity, to make use of every available player he's got, and just get that offense off the ground. Even if, people say, oh, the offenses aren't scoring juggernauts. Well, you don't have to be a scoring juggernaut. You just have to score more than the other guys on the other side of the scrimmage.
All right. So Cliff Kingsbury, Mark's guy, who has, he doesn't have a job now, but had previous head coaching experience, had previous play calling experience. So we figured that he would be a perfect fit. That being said, Nagy's very similar in that way. Wants to get back to a head coaching job, loves calling plays. All the things that we thought about Cliffy are in play here for Matt Nagy as well, Mark.
Yeah, will he be a one and done? Who knows? I hope not. But that all depends on the success of the Giants. Now, one thing about Nagy was in Kansas City, when he's there and Eric Bieniemy was there, I think that he needed that little pushback from Bieniemy. It's a yin and yang kind of deal. The creativity, honestly, mostly came from Bieniemy. And Andy was the overseer of everything. So when Bieniemy left and it was all Nagy, though they still went to 2 Super Bowls and Andy had more of the overseer of who calling the plays, they still won 2 Super Bowls. But as I said, last year, they got a little stale. The creativity was not there. So we'll see what happens in Kansas City, but I digress. That's not what we're talking about. Nagy's going to need that pushback. John's got to find somebody to put under Nagy to challenge him, not to the point of taking his job, just a little pushback, a little yin-yang to make things work and add a little bit more creativity. We'll see what happens this year. And I think if Nagy doesn't have that, will the Giants' offense be stale? No. But once they make some plays and be creative, that first go-round of the NFC East opponents or whatever, what happens the second round when teams figure you out? Can you add another wrinkle to keep the DC of your opponent off balance? That's what's going to come. So that's down the road, but that's where I think Nagy's got to be more receptive to listening to other people. Maybe his under OC, because John Harbaugh is not going to jump in and draw plays in the sand and go, hey, run this. That pushback or that little counter deal could come from Jaxon Dart. Jaxon, Nagy could say, hey man, what plays do you want to run? Or Jaxon could just drop some plays, go, I thought about this, or we did this at Mississippi, at Ole Miss, and this worked in. How about this? He may need that to make things work.
And it's perfect, I guess, match with what we suggested John Harbaugh would be, a CEO. We always go back to those three letters, a CEO. So, Patricia, he's handing the offense over to Matt Nagy. Obviously, that is significant.
Yeah, I mean, and look, Tom Coughlin was a CEO style head coach, even though, he came from the offensive side of the ball. Now, as the head coach, John Harbaugh, just like Tom Coughlin and every other head coach in the NFL, they have the right to lean into the headset if they hear a call that they don't like and say, hey, why don't we try doing this instead? Now, I don't know to what degree or how often John Harbaugh does that on a week by week basis, but he does have that right. But look, it's like any business. If you're hiring somebody to be like, a vice president or in charge of a department or something like that, you're going to let that person run it and stay out of their way and only intervene if you need to. And I think that's what, Harbaugh has done all this career, and it's worked.
CEO, Mark, we've been talking about it. It's the perfect match. It's exactly what the Giants needed.
Yeah, he's an overseer, and that's okay. He's not going to micromanage like some coaches I knew when I played for back in the day, but I digress again. He's going to oversee things. I don't see John Harbaugh stepping in and trying to call an offensive play because, honestly, he probably doesn't know all the calls. That's not what he does. That's what Sean Payton does. He's an offensive guy. But I see John Harbaugh stepping in on the defensive side going, whoa, wait. I know a little bit more about defense and offense. I may say something about that. Call cover 3, call 2-man under, whatever. I see that happening. But not to micromanage and get on every situation and tell a quarterback's coach how to handle a quarterback or tell a defensive back coach how to handle this, whatever, to the whole part. He doesn't do that. But he'll oversee it. And that's where I like the situation that he's in. And I think as Giant fans, that's what you want and that's what you need in this particular spot.
All right, zooming along here on the New York Giants squad show. We'll take our first quick break. The Giants have effectively replaced Kevin Abrams. They have a new hire in the front office. We'll tell you who it is when Jay, Patricia, and Mark return. All right, let's tell you about FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel's making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5, get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, next up is ZocDoc. Finding a doctor you actually like can feel like discovering a diamond in the rough. Sure, you want someone who's in network nearby and has availability, but also you want a doctor who listens and makes you feel comfortable and explains things clearly. Well, that kind of doctor does exist, and finding them is easy with ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website that helps you find and book high-quality in-network doctors so you can find someone you love without all the hassle. We're talking about booking in-network appointments with more than 150,000 providers across all 50 states, covering over 200 specialties from primary care and dentistry to dermatology and eye care. I'll admit it, I've definitely put off doctor appointments longer than I should. Between work, life, and everything else, it's easy to delay. ZocDoc makes the process simple. You can search by specialty or symptoms and actually build a care team that works for you. You can see real-time availability and book instantly, no phone calls, no waiting on hold. You can also read verified patient reviews so you feel confident choosing a doctor you'll actually like. And whether you want to go in person or do a video visit, ZocDoc makes it easy either way. Stop putting off those doctor appointments. Go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL to find and instantly book a doctor you love. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. One more time, ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, so we're back. Kevin Abrams out, Patricia, and Dawn Aponte in. A very interesting hire for Big Blue's front office.
I like this hire a lot. No disrespect to Kevin Abrams. He was there for 27 years, but he lost his fastball, right? He was in charge of the cap. At one point, wanted to branch into personnel. He wanted to get into scouting, wanted to do other things. And I think there was even a point where some of the cap work that he did, the contracts and whatnot, he passed off to another person in the organization. There's an old saying that somebody that I'm very, that I look up to always tells me, know what you know, work with what you're good at. And, that's not to say that you can't expand, but gradually, okay? Don't abandon what you're good at. Kevin Abrams, over the last few years, kind of got away from what he was good at. There were a couple of things. Overall, he wasn't taking full advantage of all the mechanisms to optimize the salary cap. The Giants, for example, they didn't use voidable years. Why? I have no idea. I mean, Howie Roseman, who I constantly praise as putting on master classes every year. People say to me, why do the Eagles have so much cap space? Howie Roseman uses voidable years. He uses option bonuses, two things that make a big difference that the Giants just don't use enough of, if at all.
Hopefully things change, Mark.
Yeah, I don't know much about her, but what I do know is this. I see similarities of back the early days when I played, even before I got there with the Giants. She worked in the league office. George Young worked in the league office. She worked with a few NFL teams. George Young worked with a few NFL teams. She comes to the Giants. George Young comes to the Giants. Though George Young came as at the time, general manager and capologist too at the point, she just comes to the Giants as pretty much the capologist, the cap person. So that's if that alone makes it work for me, I'm cool with that because the end results were great for us back then. We won Super Bowls and had a competitive team. Now, if she does just the cap work, fixing the salary cap, structuring that, getting that stuff worked out, I'm cool with that. I think it brings what the Giants are trying to do right now. They're building that foundation for stability from the ground building up with Harbaugh, he getting his coaching staff. Now they're doing it from the top down, working the salary cap, getting that structure, and they're going to meet in the middle. I love it. I think it's a perfect situation. So I'm all on board with it.
All right, Mark, I knew you would, and I'm glad you did. And that's George Young. And that's the first person I thought of when they hired her out of the league office, which is exactly what the situation was with George Young coming in, taking over a struggling Giants franchise. That being said, again, Patricia, that's what I thought of, the George Young situation.
Well, when George was hired, I don't think the salary cap existed back in the day.
No.
I don't think there was free agency. So George had to actually adapt to that. And I think it was Ernie Accorsi who succeeded George Young, who brought in Kevin Abrams to manage the cap. Kevin Abrams had worked with the NFL Management Council, so he knew about the cap. Now, again, Dawn Aponte, she has just to give you a little background on her, she started off, and this is an interesting story. She actually was a fill-in for the New York Jets. Her friend had gone on maternity leave, and she had a law background and an accounting background. So she came in and she initially as a temp to fill in for her friend who was on maternity leave. And they were so impressed with her work that here she is, 20 plus years later. And she's now in a high ranking position, both in, having done so in the league and with other teams and now with the Giants. So, the thing with the salary cap is you've got to optimize your money. It's like, your personal finances. If you are just putting all your money in a savings account and it's not earning you interest, then what are you optimizing your earnings? You're not. So it's kind of the same thing with the salary cap. There are mechanisms and there are tools that you can use to optimize your expenses. And without going into a whole big explanation, otherwise we'd be here all day. There are things that Dawn Aponte in previous years, did for the teams that she was with. I mentioned option bonuses, and by the way, I'm talking about this stuff on the tomorrow's Locked On Giants podcast if anybody's interested. Voidable years, which I talk about all the time, and this is going to help the Giants, hopefully. And I looked this up. The Giants have been in the very bottom third of the league in cap space since 2020. All right. This will hopefully help them to where now they don't have to keep pushing money into future years and having that money instead of having it, decrease in value against the total cap. Now maybe they'll have a little bit more money to work with year in and year out.
Mark, why I don't understand why it took him so long. And I'm not trying to pick on Kevin Abrams, but if things clearly got stale and they never got relief out of the cap out of the last decade, why did it take him so long?
Because we all know the Giants are loyal to a fault.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Sometimes loyalty is good until it's not. Because if your loyalty, if your ship is sinking and you're still loyal to that captain, you're going to go down with the ship too. So at some point you got to change. So, and that's where I think the Giants have finally got on board with the 21st century, because they were stuck in the 19th and 20th century when things it was okay then, but now things have changed. And I think the Giants have adapted to it finally. Hopefully it goes the way that I would like, and you would like, and they would like to go forward. You got to make some changes. You got to adapt to what's happening now. And you change when you see other organizations who used to be on the bottom have leapfrogged over you because they made the change and you didn't. And they said, you know what, the hell with loyalty. We want to make sure we get this ship in the right direction and moving forward. I think they're starting to see that now.
Obviously, the work is cut out for her. I mean, she's got cap issues, and there's going to be cap casualties, especially if everybody wants every Raven free agent and now every Chief free agent. You can't have them all. So if you want some, you got to get rid of some, Patricia.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Giants are going to have right now, the projected cap space they have is $7 million. That's not even going to cover the draft class. Okay, I'm telling you right now, that's not even going to cover the draft class. That may cover maybe 2 lower level free agents. All right, not any kind of splashes. So yeah, you're going to have to take a good hard look at the roster, and you're going to have to make some tough decisions. Devin Singletary comes to mind. He's not a bad running back, but you look at his production over the years and where he fits in. Can you justify paying him, the money that he's making? I think they would say $5.35 million, I think, on him. I mean, that's a big chunk of change. You look at Bobby Okereke, not a bad player. He had over 100 tackles, but you've got a draft class coming up that is loaded with linebackers. So now you say, okay, you know what, Bobby, we love you. You did great for us, but unfortunately, we've got to make this move. So these are the types of decisions that have to be made. Now, whether it be John Harbaugh who's making it, whether it be Joe Shane, or maybe the two of them, maybe it's more people. I don't know who's going to make the final call on all this stuff, but these are the decisions you have to make. And look, it's business. To Mark's point, what he was saying earlier about Giants being loyal to a fault, that's how the mom and pop shops ran. And when the Giants first started up, they were a mom and pop shop. Now they're a multi-billion-dollar business. You cannot run the multi-billion-dollar business like a mom and pop shop. You're going to hurt feelings, but that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, Mark, no one knows the business of football better than you. Obviously, you won 2 Super Bowls in New York with the Giants, but you didn't finish your career with the Giants. So again, it's a business, and you better be on board or you're going to get blown away. Yeah,
it's a business, and I don't know if you guys know this. I have significant history in the National Football League. I was one of the 7 guys who sued the National Football League for free agency. So this system that you have now in free agency is because of guys like me who put their asses on the line for players to move around and get paid. And with that, these owners, That's how all these owners' businesses are worth gazillions of dollars because of free agency. So these players that we're talking about right now, who have who will have the right to go to other teams, whether they get released or not, they could go to other teams to make the team and make a lot more money. So, that case was called the McNeil case, Freeman McNeil. So it is a business. And sometimes it's a little personal, but that's okay, because in the long run, the players who will not be with the Giants could go somewhere else and have a chance to make the team and still create an income. And the owners and the new coaches who are in the league now can still keep their business running as well. It's a business. Got it. The players who will be released for cap reasons, that's the business. That's what we signed up for. And those players who are coming from Kansas City or Baltimore or whatever, now they could come and still make money and make a team and compete for a championship.
It's different for Patricia because she's speaking to these guys. I can say something without refute, just because I don't have to face these guys in the locker room every single day. That being said, there will be cap casualties, as we said, and it's something that's very interesting. You got to wonder about the relationships in the locker room, how much things will change moving forward, Patricia.
Yeah, I mean, look, I had a player one time tell me, and I think this is a pretty good analogy, pretty close to it. He said, it's like being in the military. You go and you're assigned to a unit, and then guys that you become close with, they move on. They get promoted, they get discharged, or what have you. So he said, you make the most of what you can while you're there. And you take it 1 week at a time, because the guy that you're buddy with, who maybe has the locker next to you, he might not be there next week. Yep. So you just have to make do with what you've got. Now, that doesn't mean you can't be lifelong friends and stay in touch. But, you can't say, oh, my God, they shipped off, my friend, on the defensive line, and let that get to you. You've got to move on, and players, I think that's what surprises a lot of the young players. They say, oh, it's a business. But they don't really know, because they haven't really been touched by the business aspect of it. Nowadays you come in on a rookie deal that's already, your salary is already set for you. So there's really no haggling back and forth like there was, years ago. So they don't really understand it until they get a little older and a little bit more, experience in the league.
Let me be mean for a second. Mark, this was a 4-win team, essentially 2 wins against tanking teams. There's going to be turnover. How do you not realize this?
You got to realize it.
Yeah,
that's the nature of the beast. The record is the record, and as far as the turnover, the changes, and new players coming in, coming out, all that stuff always works itself out. It does, because I've been part of it. And the guy in your locker mate is there 1 week or 2 weeks, he's gone the next. That's part of free agency. A guy who's not performing for a long amount of time, and he gets traded out for somebody else, or a guy on that roster takes his spot, that's how it is. But what we do know is this. It's all about who's in that locker room, who's on that team that can help you win and compete. That's it. And if you looked at the whole totality of what's happening with the Giants, my thing is, I never cared who you liked, who you loved, what color you were, or whatever. If you're in this locker room and you're in this front office, I don't care if you're male, female, salary cap, I don't give a damn. If you're going to help us compete for a championship, that's what I worry about. Outside that locker room, I don't give a damn. I don't. But when we're in this locker room and in this stadium, if we're on the same page to get to the highest level of winning, that's what I'm about. So, and that's what people usually see in the locker room. That's what they're about. They care about nothing else other than what can we do to win, to get that ring. That is it.
Well said there. All right, we have to do assistants because obviously the big three are in place: offense, defense, special teams. We still have to fill out the assistant roster. We'll try and figure that all out next. All right, let's tell you about Indeed. There we go. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, well, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, just trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring? Well, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page, and it helps you reach the right candidates faster. If I needed to hire someone for this show, I'd go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need. Real experience, not just a resume buzzword. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. Sponsored Jobs boosts your post to the people who are the best match for your role, and that makes a real difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now. Support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Are you hiring? Well, do it the right way with Indeed. All right, halfway home alongside Patricia and Mark. My name is Jay. So we have some assistant holes, I guess, for lack of a better term. Charlie Bullen was retained, but some interesting news there, Patricia.
Yeah, the Arizona Cardinals, who are putting together their staff, requested to talk to Charlie Bullen about their defensive coordinator spot. So Charlie Bullen, who I believe would have been the outside linebackers coach for the Giants, has a chance to go on and be a defensive coordinator if he gets the job. And, obviously the Giants are not going to block a potential promotion. Very rarely do teams block a coach from getting a promotion. So that's something to keep an eye on. And that's kind of important because look at what Charlie Bullen was able to do, not just with the defense when he was appointed defensive coordinator, but Brian Burns had a monster of a year, the best year of his career. All right. Kayvon Thibodeau, who doesn't get enough credit, was pretty darn good against the run, which, doesn't show up in the stats per se, but he was a real good force against the run. And even Abdul Carter turned it around to where now he's in, defensive rookie of the year consideration. So, which we'll find out on Thursday night if he won that. So Charlie Bullen, really, really good coach, has a chance to become a defensive coordinator. We'll see if that happens, obviously. But that would be kind of a big loss, I think, because now you lose that familiarity with the young player, with Abdul Carter, and with Bullen having reached out to Thibodeau and helped Burns. They'll replace him, but look, everybody's replaceable, but some guys are less replaceable in other ways than some.
I'm wondering if Bullen wasn't retained by John Harbaugh, Mark, would he even got a request? I think the fact that he was retained tells you all you need to know about what John Harbaugh thinks of him.
Yeah, that, and plus I think Charlie put himself in a great position for what he did the last 5, 6, 7 games of the season for defense. He did well enough, and the players responded to him. And so, yeah, and I think just being warned, just the job offer from the interview just for the DC at Arizona warranted what he did with the Giants in the last 7 games. But yeah, for him to be retained by John speaks volumes. I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. On the other end, if he goes to Arizona, is it a significant loss? I'm going to push back and say no, because I think if he was a defensive coordinator, yeah, it'd be a different story. But he is big part, but not to a point where it's detrimental if he took the Arizona job. Because I think that you plug in a linebackers coach that John probably already has lined up already. If he takes the job at Arizona, that somebody they'll trust him as well. Will the drop off of the familiarity of him not being there be felt? Yeah, but not to a point where it's going to be a huge drop off where the players are going to they're going to digress in what they accomplish. So I'm glad he's got that opportunity on both sides to get a DC job in Arizona if he gets it, or the linebacker job with the Giants if he stays with the Giants. It's fine, but I think there's a plan B, if you will, for a linebackers coach that John already has in mind.
All right, let's do the offensive line coach because there's been drama around this now for weeks. Carmen Brasillo gone. They wanted the Baltimore guy. He took another job. So now it might be Juan Castillo. Patricia, tell us what we need to know.
Yeah, that's an interesting name. I mean, Castillo has connections, I think, with Nagy. I think to a degree with John Harbaugh, and of course he was with I'm
Grant
not
Newsom.
sure more the new assistant offensive line coach.
Grant Newsom.
What is it?
Grant Newsom.
Grant Newsom. Yeah, sorry.
Right.
For some reason, I kept thinking the head coach's name here. But anyway, he worked with him in Michigan. So there's that level of familiarity that if you bring him in, this is a guy that, they know of. Now, interestingly enough, Jeff Stoutland, the longtime Eagles offensive coach, is not being retained or decided basically, I shouldn't say he's not being retained, decided that he's not going to coach anymore for the Eagles. He is still under contract for one more year. So it's not as though the Giants are going to pick up the phone and say, hey, come on over. Now, the way they can maybe get him without having to give up any comp picks or, draft picks or anything like that is if they offer a promotion, say you're going to be the assistant head coach. They can fudge titles around in order to make it look like a promotion. That's a guy who I kind of wish was a free agent because that would be a no-brainer hire. And I bet you a lot of teams who are looking for offensive line coaches would be on his doorstep asking him to come over.
I'm nervous that we all wanted Carmen Brasillo back. He leaves, and now the offensive line stinks. Now, that's not a guarantee, Mark, but that's what I'm worried about. I guess that's worst case scenario, and that's just the doubtful Giant fan in me. But again, you just don't know.
No, you don't know. But let's not put too much on either coach leaving somewhere, whether it's Bullen or Steele, whatever. You got to put the person in the position that can implement your plan. That goes ready to what we're talking about with Charlie Bullen. It's a whole different deal. If you could put the guy who could implement your system and teach it to the players, that's what you want. What I mean by teaching, not physically teaching, but instructing them mentally. Because you got to remember something when you get to the pros. No one's teaching anybody squat. They're instilling what they know and apply what they know to the players. Because a player who's coming into the league, they are who they are. Now, you can teach a couple of techniques based on what you know from former players to whatever. You could teach that, but you got to implement it into that player's mindset. That's what you want to do. So whether it's an offensive line coach or a linebacker coach, whatever, that's what you want that coach who you bring in on that level to do.
All right, so obviously the Giants need a quarterbacks coach as well, which is interesting because I feel like there hasn't been much made of this, and I'm glad you put it in our notes, Patricia, because I'd actually completely forgot they didn't hire a quarterbacks coach. It seems like this one's under the radar. Am I wrong on that?
No, you're not wrong, and I'm surprised it hasn't been talked about that much either. And it's an important role. I mean, look, you got the offensive coordinator now, so I would expect the offensive line coach and the quarterbacks coach that will fall into place because those are all, intertwined. But the quarterbacks coach, now T. Martin, I think wasn't retained. I think he's available. Now, is he going to Cleveland with Monken? That I don't know. But that's the name to certainly keep an eye on and see if maybe he comes to the Giants. But that's going to be a key hire because that's the guy who is going to be in the classroom with Jaxon Dart and Jameis Winston and any other quarterback they decide to bring in. That's the guy who's going to be on the sideline, working with the quarterbacks. So that is probably just as big of a hire now that offensive coordinator is settled as the offensive line coach. Those are the two big ones still remaining on the staff.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
I would look at a Byron Leftwich. Another guy's out there who's not getting any kind of looks. Somebody like that would make more sense to me than a T. Martin. But there's connections there with T. Martin and everybody else. But Byron Leftwich, he has great success down in Tampa, and I went over to Colorado for a year under Dion. But here's a guy who can really mentor a young quarterback. So I would throw that name in the ring as well.
I like it. All right. Go ahead.
I was going to say I like it. I like that name as well.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. I completely forgot about the quarterbacks coach, and now I'm realizing that that's kind of a big deal. I know we just discussed it, but the fact that one has been left for last, that and the O-line, I'm kind of surprised, Patricia.
Well, actually, not necessarily. I mean, it could be that maybe Harbaugh's taking his time with those hires. Just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean that, oh my gosh, we should panic. It could be that he's looking at a variety of candidates that we don't know about or we haven't heard about, and he's just vetting it all out to make sure that he has the right fit. Now, for what it's worth, I mean, I don't know if this is going to matter any. I suppose it will. Jaxon Dart's been out in San Francisco all week as part of the Super Bowl festivities. So maybe, Harbaugh is thinking to himself, okay, you know what? I think I want Jaxon and the quarterbacks coach, the guys that I'm considering, to sit down and talk and make sure that there's a fit there. So that could be what the reason behind the delay, for all we know.
All right. Interesting stuff. I will say this next segment that we're going to do all about the Super Bowl, I'm pretty pumped because my memories of the Super Bowl, you can ask my TV. Mark Collins has memories of Super Bowls from actually being in the Super Bowl. So there's a huge difference. We'll do all that next. All right, let's talk to you about Quo. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think, oh, there's got to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O. The smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. I love how simple Quo makes everything. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal. It works right from your phone or computer, and you can even keep your existing number. At Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps so details never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNFL. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNFL. No missed calls, no missed customers. All right, so we're on the verge of Super Bowl 60, and I don't know what to say about it other than it's not a great matchup. I think there's a lot of people that are down on it. But again, at least in the beginning of the game, the Super Bowl will be fun. Now, third and fourth quarters, who knows? And I'm not saying it won't be a great game, but Patricia, it's Super Bowl week, and it just, I don't know. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of buzz.
I haven't really done a whole lot of coverage on the Super Bowl. Nothing really. I mean, there's Giants-related stuff, and I've been saving that until tomorrow, memories and all that stuff. I've been to, 4 Super Bowls now? 4 out of the 5? No, I'm sorry, 5. I did the one that was here in New Jersey. So I've covered a number of Super Bowls. I was in the stands for Super Bowl 25, wide right. Never forget that one. That was quite good. Yeah, I was there for that one. And of course, I covered as a member of the media the last 2. But Super Bowl week just goes so quickly. It just really does. For me as a member of the media, I get bombarded with all these announcements and these marketing campaigns and sorting through them. And there's just not enough hours in the day because you got to find a balance between covering your team and touching upon that. But there are some former Giants in this, which I'm sure we'll talk about, who you'd like to see maybe come out on top. You got Corey Durden and Tommy DeVito with the Patriots. And of course, Ben McAdoo, you could say, is also a former Giant. And then over in Seattle, you got Julian Love, you got Drew Lock, you got Leonard Williams. So, look, the Super Bowl, not everybody gets there in their lifetime, whether you're media or a player. So while you're there, you take advantage of it.
It's interesting because in 1986, I was 8 years old, and I remember I couldn't watch Wide Right. I had to turn away, despite the fact that I was 8 years old and I had no idea what was happening. Mark, you were my hero.
Oh,
those in 86 and 90, it's memories I'll have for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it was great, and thanks for the kind words. But it was fun. Doing Super Bowl week as a player, and we all say this: you try to keep things as normal as possible. And I do believe this: the team that can stay focused the best wins. It's always not the best team; it's the team that stays focused the longest and the best. So in '86, we were the more focused team. Were we the better team? Yeah, but we were focused as well. Our 1990 team, were we the better team? I don't know. Probably Buffalo was, but we were focused. We were focused. We played the Bears, that stretch, and we beat Chicago. Then we fly to San Francisco and beat a very good San Francisco team. We were focused. And then we go into Tampa, number one ranked defense in the NFL, and we beat probably the better team. If we play them best of series, we probably lose the series. Put it that way. But for that day, we were focused. It's great because there's nothing better in sports than being the champion. Nothing comes close. Second place, no, it's always winning, and that's something that I've always monitored and monetized as well. And even to the point on the back of my car, my license plates, it says two-time champ, because that's something they can never take away from you. So you got to stay focused. The team that's focused is wonderful. And winning, to me, in the best city and fan base in the world, New York, New Jersey. New York, you can't beat it. You can't beat it.
Mark, you were a rookie too in '86. What were your expectations after that year? You won a Super Bowl every single year.
Well, yeah, you would think, because you're fooled, because you think, oh, we could do this every year in '86, and then comes that drought. That drought, 87, 88, 89. You think, will I ever get back here again? And I can only imagine people who never got the opportunity. But I was so blessed to get that second bite at the apple, and win again is great. So you want to hold on to any opportunity you get, that opportunity to get there, embrace it, live it, cherish it, because you don't know if it'll ever come again. So I was very lucky to get two shots at it. Really three, got one in Green Bay, but it's just that the opportunity.
Yeah, I was thinking of Dan Marino, because Dan Marino, as a rookie, got to the Super Bowl, didn't win it, and then never sniffed it again, Patricia. So as we said, Mark was a rookie. Dan Marino was a rookie, two very different careers.
Yeah, and Dan Marino's in the Hall of Fame. So, which, don't get me started on the Eli Manning controversy, because we could do another hour show on that alone. But yeah, look, when you get there, and it's funny because I covered several Super Bowls. The 2011 one, the Giants had a lot of rookies on that team. Some guys, some undrafted free agents that had made the team. And I can distinctly remember how they were just absolutely in awe over it. They were like wide-eyed. They're like, oh my God, look at this. And having, at that point in my life, I, had done this before, and I had seen what other Giant teams had done. And before that, obviously the other, I think it was the Denver team. I think I had gone to that Super Bowl as well. Anyhow, you can't be swallowed up by the atmosphere. You have to keep your focus, like Mark said, because you got to treat it like it's another game. You've got to put, yeah, you've got more media you have to do, and you have to do this, and the setup's a little different, and you're away from your home locker room and your lounge and all the things that you're familiar with. And at the end of the day, it's all about what got you there, and that's the X's and O's. And if you're not tied into that and focused on that, you're not going to win, and you're going to kick yourself.
Yeah, Mark, I'm sure the memories you have from both those Super Bowls with the Giants are stuff you'll never forget.
Yeah, and one of the things that, I mean, I could tell you stories. We could do 4 or 5 shows, to be honest with you. But one of the things that I've done, was to try to keep things as normal as possible. There's a lot of moving parts around you. You got to keep a core of what you did to get you here. Study. You can't overstudy, to be honest with you. Study, same habits, just that little core things you do. One of the things that we did, especially in 1990, I've always taken the defensive backs out on Thursdays for DB night. And that DB night was drinks, dinner, just coming together, keeping things, telling stories, whatever. We did that in Tampa. Even though the circus around us, we kept that core of what we did our DB night, go out to dinner, have whatever. Stuff like that you gotta keep the same as possible. Can you try to keep it as a regular game? You try, but there's no such thing because it's not. Everything you've done in a regular season is magnified times 5, especially being in New York because you're the Giants, flagship deal. The Giants in Super Bowls and in the Super Bowl period is magnified by at least, I'm going to say 1,000, 10,000 times. Everything you do is there. I could imagine it'd be even more so in today's landscape of social media and all the podcasts or whatever. So it's a lot of stuff, man. And it still comes down to the teams that stay focused and don't overstudy, keep things as simplistic as possible, is going to win. They're going to win. One thing is going to come up. As much as you study, there's going to be a wrinkle. It may be a fake punt, onside kick, whatever, because that's what you do. Because what you've done over the whole season, everybody knows. We did it with the Giants, fake punt in the NFC Championship game. It comes up. So you got to be ready for the unexpected because it's going to show.
Hope we get a fake punt. That would be great. Let me just say that you're both the perfect person to ask. We'll start on the media side with Patricia. Sunday with a week in between, or the second Sunday, so a bye week, seems like a lot of time. Now, if we get rid of the bye week, that's not enough time. And in the middle is Wednesday or Thursday, which they're never going to do. So I feel like there's no fix here, Patricia.
No, I don't think there is. And, look, it all boils down to, do they add an 18th game to the regular season schedule?
Right.
Now you're pushing things back even further.
Right.
I think there was a time when you went from the championship game right to the Super Bowl. There wasn't that bye week in between. I think now, because the Super Bowl has evolved into such a huge event, they need that bye week because I forget who published it, but somebody got hold of the NFL's writer for the host city, the Super Bowl host city. And if I remember correctly, they require use of the stadium and surrounding facilities for, I think, 30 days before and 15 days after. Mm-hmm. So I wish I could remember who had it, but I saw it last night when I was perusing the web. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. The Super Bowl has evolved into a global, humongous event. From a media perspective, I always equate it to, it's almost like a convention, because you see people that, maybe you talk to or you see once in a while. So that and the Combine are like two huge events. I mean, the Combine, not so much as like the Super Bowl, but I'll tell you this much. The Super Bowls that I've covered as a member of the media, I have never been as busy during the course of a normal week, I'm pretty busy, but during the Super Bowl, I'm talking like if I got 4 hours of sleep, and I don't function well on anything less than 6, but if I got 4 hours of sleep, that was a lot. I don't know how I did it.
Mark, I was going to say, Mark, 2 weeks to 1 week as a player, I'm very, very curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I've done both sides, from on the media side and on the player side. And I went through the 2 weeks that we had in Super Bowl 21. We had 2 weeks that bye week, and Super Bowl 25 because of the Gulf War that we went straight to the game. So we've done both. I do believe, yeah. So it's different. It was different. I like the non-bye week. I want to go right to the game. I want to get in, get out. While the juices are still flowing, and especially when you're on a roll, you want to keep it going. And you don't want to have too much time to overthink things. So I like going right into the game. It just seems easy, seamless. But, once again, as Patricia said, and I'm not putting words in her mouth, this league wants to make money. It's all about money. How can we keep this thing going, sell all the ads we want, take over the city, and the people make money too. The Super Bowl city makes money as well. I think it's great. So kudos to that. But I like to, as a player, let's go right to the game.
All right, real quick. I think the Pats are going to win. I don't really have a good reason why. Patricia, your thoughts?
I'm going to go with the Hawks. I don't know why. I don't have a reason why, but I guess Drake May's shoulder issue kind of worries me just a smidge. I'm going to go with the Hawks on this one.
Mark?
I don't even care.
Here,
I don't.
right. This is what I'm rooting for, and it's partially tongue in cheek, but I'm interested to get your opinions on both. Make the game on Saturday. If you want the bye week, fine, but make the game on Saturday. Is that unreasonable, Patricia?
I don't think it's unreasonable. I think it would be awkward at first. It would take some getting used to, because now it's like Super Bowl Sunday. I've always said, hey, make it a national holiday because everybody calls out the day afterwards, from work because, they're at Super Bowl parties and the game is usually at nighttime on the East Coast and whatnot. I would say, isn't the college championship games played on a Saturday? So why would you want to, move the Super Bowl to a Saturday? I think leaving it on Sunday is, Sunday. If you think about it, go back to history. Football games were mostly played on Sundays, and it was only till recent that now you had Monday night, you had Thursday night, and Saturday, and Friday. So stay with tradition, I think.
Give us Monday off. How about that, Mark?
I like it too. But listen, I'm going to set I got a over and under at 10 of my beer intake. So I'm right now. I'm fudging on the under.
Well, I guess it's a good thing we're not doing a show Monday morning, huh?
Yep.
All right. So
you're a wine guy, Mark.
No. That's too bougie.
Oh, okay.
No.
It's Big Blues defense right there. Not a wine guy, a beer guy.
Big Blues.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've run out of time. Super Bowl 60 is just a couple of days away. Should be fun. Obviously, the Giants are the focus here on the Squad Show. But again, it's a national holiday, so to speak. So it should be fun. All right. For Patricia and Mark, my name is Jay. It's been fun. We'll be with you next week, Tuesday, 1 Eastern time. So long. God bless and enjoy the Super Bowl.